carbon farming. Is this on? Yes. Welcome to Inside the System, a special edition podcast brought to you by Sistema.bio. In this series, we open the doors to our own conversations, sharing our vision, our challenges, and the ideas that drive us forward as we work with farmers to improve life on Earth. No filters, no scripts, just honest exchanges from inside the world's largest carbon farming network. Hi, I'm Vijay Bhopal, Product Director at Sistema.bio. It's my pleasure to be your host today as we take you inside the system. In today's episode, I've been challenged to explain DMRV at 3 levels of complexity to a kid, a young professional, and an expert. Let's go. So India, as a teenager, what is your perspective on climate change and the efforts that we are all making to try and reduce the effects of climate change?
I mean, for me personally, like when I was in junior school, when we moved here, definitely in England, I was told we have 11 years, 10 years left until it's irreversible, the damage that we've made. I've always been told about the things that cause climate change. It's taught in my curriculum. It's in my tests for different subjects, across the sciences. In geography, I'm taught about it, and I'm meant to know it. The landfills, methane. I'm taught to reduce plastic waste. But then I definitely know that in my generation, people my age, people younger than me, people a little bit older, we know that we need to stop this, but I don't really think we know how, because there's so much that we can do. You can go on social media and you can campaign, but then it kind of ends there, or you don't really continue it. And then the most that I know I do is probably using less paper and not using as many plastic things, looking for things that are made out of wood, biodegradable, but it always kind of feels like it's not enough, especially because we know that there's so much going on. We know all the landfill, we know all the cars, we know all the planes, because it's taught, and we need to know to stop it, but then we kind of can't. So it's a bit weird. It's a bit daunting.
A bit overwhelming.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole societal effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah.
Which is actually the topic for today. I want to talk about how we measure all of these efforts collectively, because it's very atomized, actually. There's different approaches, there's different methodologies, there's different project types across transport, energy, and all the rest of the subjects that you mentioned. So there's a subject which is called MRV, Measurement, Reporting, and Verification of Emissions Reductions Efforts.
Right. Okay.
And this is actually the topic, because there's no one way to do things. There's very different ways of doing this measurement process. It differs for different project types. For example, in forestry, it's very different to measuring how many trees are being cut or planted compared to how much energy is being used. Totally different project sites, right? So how well this MRV process is done helps us to know the quality of a project. And quality is how much can we trust that what this person is claiming in terms of their emissions reduction is actually what's happening on the ground for real.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it measuring just any particular emission, or is it all of them for different projects?
Every project has an MRV process. There are lots of different methodologies, but every project has to follow one.
Okay.
And there are good parts and bad parts to different methodologies. One of the things that we're really interested in at Sistema.bio, but also many others in the field, is introducing more technology into the MRV process.
It sounds very worthwhile, the project and the MRV, the different methods for data collecting with technology. It sounds really, really good.
Give me one.
I think it was a very good explanation. But maybe that's because I've heard it twice.
We should clip that for the end. Thanks for being here. Have you heard of climate change?
Sorry, wait. I need to get that out.
Do you know what climate change is?
Yeah, of course I've heard of climate change.
But have you heard of carbon removals and reductions projects?
Yeah, I've heard of them in the news.
In the news? That sounds ominous. So what have you heard in the news?
I've mainly heard, I think, bad news about them. So I've heard about kind of scandals in offset credits.
Okay.
And I've also heard about, I used to live in Scotland, so I've heard about, companies buying up land to develop, to do reforestation projects to get credits, I think, out of that. And how that also creates a problem in terms of like land ownership and I guess taking away public assets and making them private, which can be good but can also be harmful, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of different projects under this umbrella, whether it's compliance markets or voluntary markets, but all creating removals or reductions in emissions. And I want to talk about one thing in particular, which is how we monitor these projects. We report that data and we verify that that data is accurate and real. So all of that is called MRV.
Okay.
And you mentioned that you've read in the news that there are some scandals around that, which is correct. And that's a big topic. So some of the work that we're doing at Sistema.bio, and there are a lot of other companies working on this as well, is to really bring up the quality of the MRV. And part of the way that we're doing this is we're using digital tools. So instead of only sending people out into the field to see what's going on, to take photos or to do surveys or whatever, we're using automated systems, whether it's remote sensing, satellite data, and we're collecting all of this data that we can then pair with more manual approaches to give us a more complete picture of projects and then report, hopefully with much greater accuracy and without increasing the cost too much, really what is going on with that project. So part of what we're trying to do is reduce the scandal and increase the trust in carbon projects. So tell me a bit more about what you read. Did that affect what your level of trust in these projects?
I think I've heard about something like double counting. So where the certification body actually will dedicate a project to certain credits, but then they'll be duplicated. So actually you're not like the net effect is not what is reported. And to me, that just seems like a problem that all certification bodies have, which is a lack of kind of oversight or regulation, because there's not enough manpower to just inspect them regularly, and the incentives of the market are such that players, that's how I view it, which is quite cynical, but players are always trying to break the rules, even when they're operating in a market that's supposedly, to benefit people and planet.
That's a really interesting perspective. I'm not sure that I see it as that cynical, honestly. I think that it's a valid concern. Obviously, these stories went all over the world, and the lack of trust in the carbon market has been around for a long time. It's nothing new. And it's everybody's responsibility in the market, so all the actors, from the regulators, those that set the methodologies, the project developers, the financiers, to understand these concerns and start to drive up quality and trust. So there's different ways that we can do that, but one of the ways that we're really concentrated on is bringing in the digital MRV aspect, where we understand that it's not cost effective for us to send people into every single farm, because we work with thousands and thousands of farmers. So that's not really an option. So then what we would typically do is we would take a sampling approach where we say we're going to go to X number of farms, do surveys, take manual measurements, and deal with that data. Now what we're saying is we will augment that with digital data. So that's in our biogas case, that's a flow meter where we take gas flow measurements and a temperature sensor where we can verify that the biogas stove has been used. We combine that with our manually collected data. We have a holistic picture of what's going on. Our theory is that we can then say, this is a quality approach. There's much less risk associated with double counting or not knowing whether a ton of offset is really a ton of offset or emissions reductions, and not leave really room in the market for low quality approaches that spoil the market.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If more companies were doing that, do you think you'd be able to regain your trust in this market, or you're too deeply cynical at this point?
No, I think that's a good point, and that's probably a really good use of digitalization. And you might be using also like AI tools, but that's probably the best. I mean, in my mind, unregulated markets where there's not much oversight can really benefit from these kind of tools. And then you set like a new standard for the market where anyone who's not using those tools kind of becomes discredited automatically, I guess. But yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like exactly what the market needs to be more effective as well in fighting, climate change. So I really like what you said actually about third-party certification, because that reminds me of something that is more personal to me, which is purchasing supplements. So recently there's also been scandals in that market about heavy metal contamination. And as a kind of, let's say, informed or want to be informed consumer, I've now only been purchasing supplements from companies that publicly disclose that their products have been subject to third-party certification and that undergo regular testing and publish it on their website. So I can already see how, like from a consumer perspective, this definitely benefits me, and I'm sure in the market that you operate in and the players that operate in that market, maybe it will have the same effect.
Interesting. So that's a personal health risk in your case.
Yeah.
And in our case, it's not a person, but it's a commercial risk that people should be looking to minimize. That's a good analogy. Thanks for that. Abhi, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here, Vijay.
So let's start off. Just tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Right. So I am the head of product at a agri-tech company here in the UK called Soil Association Exchange. And what we do is that we help measure the environmental impact of farms. And we measure them across a variety of different metrics: carbon, biodiversity, water, social, and others. We pull tons of data from remote sensing, in-field data collection, farmers' own logs, to essentially pull up a picture for them and then help them move to better practices and to get the right funding from both private and public players to help do that.
Amazing. So you're a data geek in a team of data geeks.
Yeah, there's tons of data, but we're working across making sure the incentives are right for the farmers, and then the methodology of data collection, and then yes, presenting that data back for actionable insights at the farm level, but also the measurement requirements for the supply chain for regulation and compliance as well.
Abhi, you're obviously really deep into the data world, but what I want to know is, in the market more generally, how is MRV changing?
Right. Well, yeah, a lot has happened in the last 10, 15 years. I think the theme really is that the cost of data collection on farm is decreasing. And partly because of the increase in remote sensing capabilities, as well as the ability for cheap sensors to collect data on farm. So this is just requiring less manual data collection. So now, what does that mean? So obviously that's one big change, and then there's the AI and data analytical capabilities. So when you put that together, the real change is that the world is moving to a ground truth data collection from part of their, let's say, their supply chain, if we're talking about companies here, to then extrapolating that out using cheaper versions of data collection that may have limitations, their accuracy, but still then allow holistic pictures for their supply chain. So you're coupling ground truth data with remote sensing and cheaper in-field data sensors, and then using AI and better data analytical capabilities, being able to extrapolate that across their supply chain.
I'm just thinking about the Sistema.bio approach, where we've gone from a world where we're using manual data collection approaches.
Yeah.
We're now introducing smart metering, where we have a digital element on gas flow. We also understand stove temperature. And we're going to be marrying these approaches together.
Yeah.
It's really a commercial decision at this point. And trying to get a degree of accuracy that's really good enough.
Yeah.
But we're not paying ridiculous amounts of money to get that last few percent.
Exactly.
But looking to the future, I can see massive scope for AI to change the way that we are doing every part of this, from the M, the R, and the V.
Yeah.
And particularly interested in the verification part.
Yeah.
Because we get so much data. And it's a manual process to really understand the quality of that data, remove anomalies. And I'm excited about that being done in an automated fashion.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a bit more about AI? It doesn't have to be in biogas, but just generally in what you're seeing in this market.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. AI is a tool that is going to be used in all stages. So I think I spoke a little bit around how AI is already used in improving the models to estimate SOC, let's say soil organic carbon from satellite. But the next step is, once you get those estimations and you have that predicated on some ground truth samples, how do you improve your models by enabling verification across your farms, let's say, for SOC on what actually has happened. And this is where AI can come in to correlate other bits that is being collected on farm to say that now you are more likely to have a more accurate SOC prediction or estimate via satellite.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, part of what you're saying is to do with the trust that we can put into the forecasts or the scoring that you're giving. They can either be verified using manual interventions, like photos, phone calls, all of the normal things that we would do, or we can use historical precedent through big data to score that. So it's a completely different way of doing it, and maybe that's a mindset shift that we have to go through to be able to say, yeah, we actually trust that.
Yeah.
So Abby, Sistema.bio works with family farmers all over the world. Our biggest market is in India. You've mentioned that you see a future where we're using digital approaches together with manual approaches.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for companies like Sistema.bio and others working in the energy and agriculture space?
Yeah, that's a big question. So, couple of bits that I would suggest. So one is, the devil here is always going to be in the detail of how accurate your model or your MRV process should be. So the first thing is to figure out what the actual requirement is from your clients. What is the level of accuracy required? That would set the stage up for how much focus to put on ground truthing versus the more digital satellite and lower cost ways to collect data. The second bit of advice would be, how can you build the right partnerships to collect the remote sense information or the in-field sensors that you may use?
Thanks so much for that. So lastly, Abby, we've talked about digital, we've talked about a combination of different approaches in MRV. Is there a future for MRV without the digital component?
No, unfortunately. Maybe it's not unfortunate. So no, there is no future without digital MRV now. Supply chains are too big. And the requirements for companies mean that the type of data they need to collect across their farms that they may be working with is so vast and needs to be synthesized in so many ways that the cost is just simply too high to collect ground truth data from in all cases. So digital technologies are here to stay. They are a way for us to get a holistic picture of what is happening, but they will always be a cornerstone of the actual data set that the models are trained on. So there will always be room for ground truth data. It's just that it's not fit for purpose for these large actors that require MRV processes.
Do you think that buyers are getting on board with that? I mean, I'm thinking about the voluntary market where there's been problems around very cheap and plentiful carbon credits. This is still going on.
Yeah.
Are we going to see an end to that soon? I mean, it really has to be led to some extent by buyers, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it's led by regulation bodies as well as buyers. I think, yes, the issue of how good these models need to be is still a question mark at this stage. There isn't good consensus across the variety of different applications for MRV. So, I mean, you are right. The buyers need to have a understanding of what good quality looks like, but at the same time, this needs to come in. Really, the impetus for what quality is going to come in from these regulation bodies. So we need to be working with them more.
Where is the impetus for change coming from? Does it have to come from the buyers? Does it come from project developers? Is it from the regulators? How do we move past this stage that we're in now?
Look, I think the honest answer is that change will need to come from all of those actors. I think the regulation bodies have a large role to play here. In the last 5 years, we know that the quality of such projects have been criticized, and the reality is that the buyers will always want a cheaper way to ensure that their projects get delivered. But the regulation bodies have to have a threshold for quality, and the project developers should be able to understand the options available. What does low quality look like? What does high quality look like? And be able to put that on the table for buyers to go for. And then we have to ensure that the marketing and the storytelling is done well across the players.
Well, we're doing our part. Thank you.
No problem.